Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 85.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we start the day with what sounds on paper like a relatively minor accident, right? But it instantly exposes the raw, frayed nerves of this entire household.
Yeah, it's a perfect pressure cooker scenario.
We are in the inner quarters, and this young master named Jia Huan has just accidentally knocked over a medicine pot.
A simple mistake.
Right, he just spills some medicine. The maids naturally scold him, because that's a mess, but his reaction is just, it's chilling.
It really is.
He actually complains about being yelled at and then casually remarks that next time he'll just take the little maid's life.
Like it's nothing. He delivers the threat with total unthinking callousness. But the true focal point of the scene isn't even the boy's cruelty.
Right, it's the mom.
Exactly. It's the reaction of his mother, concubine Zhao, because she doesn't, calmly correct his manners or tell him to apologize.
Oh no, she pants.
She frantically rushes out, physically clamps her hand over his mouth, and just forces him into silence.
And the text makes it really clear she isn't just embarrassed by her kid acting up. She is reacting to an existential threat.
Totally.
She literally tells him that his big mouth is going to get her killed. And, in a modern context, that sounds like pure hyperbole.
Right, like a stressed mom exaggerating.
Yeah. But in a polygamist aristocratic household, the margins for error are just razor thin. A child's careless mistake doesn't just mean a scolding from the principal. It risks total social and potentially physical erasure for the mother.
Precisely. And what's fascinating here is how the author deliberately establishes a baseline of anxiety, precariousness, and just sheer powerlessness.
It's so tense.
It is. The author is dissecting the nature of her terror. Concubine Zhao's standing is inherently fragile anyway, and the text deliberately notes that her resentment toward the woman who actually runs the household.
The formidable Wang Shifeng.
Yes, Wang and Shifei. Concubine Zhao's resentment toward her has grown significantly deeper recently.
Yeah.
And the catalyst for this, Wang Shifeng's daughter, Qiji, has just recovered from an illness.
Which, on the surface, sounds like a moment for universal family celebration, right? A kid gets better.
You'd think so.
But if we look at the physics of displaced anxiety in a closed hierarchy, it actually makes perfect sense.
Yeah, break that down.
Well, concubine Zhao is essentially trapped in, the lower rungs of management in a highly toxic corporate environment.
That's a great analogy.
She knows she has absolutely no real leverage against the executive suite, which Wang Shifeng totally controls.
Right.
So Kyoji's recovery cements Wang Shifeng's position, sealing concubine Zhao's lack of power. That immense crushing anxiety has literally nowhere to go but down.
It trickles all the way down.
Exactly. It manifests as these petty, incredibly dangerous threats against the lowest people on the totem pole, the maids.
It is a brilliant illustration of structural violence, because the author grounds us in this claustrophobic, paranoid energy right at the start.
Just to set the mood.
Right, because the narrative doesn't let us linger there. We are about to experience a profound structural whiplash.
Oh, major whiplash.
The family leaves this boiling pot of the inner quarters and ascends to the absolute peak of imperial power in the very next scene.
And the contrast is just disorienting. Word comes down that it's the Prince of Beijing's birthday.
A huge deal.
Right. So the patriarch of the family, Jia Zheng, gathers the male family members, Jia Shi, Jia Zhen, Jia Lian, and the teenager Bao Yu, to go pay their respects at the prince's palace.
And remember, these are the absolute authorities of the Jia clan.
The top of the food chain at home.
Exactly. But pay attention to how the text slows down here to describe the spatial dynamics of their arrival. It emphasizes the sheer psychological weight of the architecture.
It's so intimidating.
They don't just walk through a front door. They must first surrender their official calling cards. Then this eunuch emerges, casually rolling prayer beads in his hands.
I love that detail.
It's so good. He projects this air of supreme, unhurried dominance. The Jia men are led through two separate massive layers of gates and then forced to turn past another colossal hall just to finally reach the inner palace doors.
Every single step is engineered to make them feel small.
To put them in their place.
Yeah, it's a physical manifestation of their lower status in this specific environment. And then comes the formal greeting. The prince is in full ceremonial dress. Jia, Shi, and Jia Zheng men in their 50s or 60s, men who literally dictate life and death within their own sprawling estate. They must physically drop to their knees and press their heads to the stone before the prince.
It is a stark, physical reminder of their subjection. But then, the script of courtly etiquette completely flips.
This is the crazy part.
The prince zeroes in entirely on the teenager, Bao Yu. He tells the boy, I haven't seen you in a long time. I've been thinking of you.
Wow.
Right. And while all the esteemed elders, the patriarchs who just submitted themselves on the floor, are summarily dismissed to the main crowded banquet hall with all the rest of the guests.
The prince keeps Bayou behind.
Yes. He keeps the teenager behind for a private chat.
I have to push back here, or at least analyze the sheer friction of this moment.
Go for it.
The core of this society is age-based filial piety, right? Deference to your elders is the absolute law.
Unquestionable law.
So how do Xi and Jia Zheng swallow the profound discomfort of being dismissed to, like, the metaphorical cafeteria, while their teenage dependent gets a private audience with royalty?
Well, it requires a massive compartmentalization of their pride. But strategically, they endure it because royal favor instantly overrides the traditional laws of filial piety. The prince isn't just engaging in small talk with an interesting kid.
He's making a statement.
A highly visible, deliberate show of patronage. By publicly isolating and elevating Bayou, the prince is wrapping the entire Jia family in his protective mantle, but explicitly on his own terms.
And he cements those terms with a very specific gift, too. He has a private, delicate lunch prepared for Bayou, and then hands the boy a custom-made replica of his famous jade.
Oh, that replica jade is the mechanical anchor of this entire interaction.
Really? How so?
Well, in king aristocratic culture, gifting a mirrored object or a replica of something intimately tied to a person isn't just a souvenir.
It's not just a trinket.
Not at all. It is a proxy of the prince's own status. It is a physical declaration that says, you are under my wing. The elders might feel a sting to their ego in the moment kneeling on the floor, but structurally, they are thrilled.
Because they know what it means.
Yes. They know this VIP treatment translates immediately into tangible leverage.
And we don't even have to wait to see that leverage materialize. The royal favor has immediate, heavy-hitting consequences for the family's standing before the day is even over.
It moves so fast. During their private chat, the prince drops a piece of massive political intelligence.
Oh, right.
He casually mentions to Bayou that the regional governor, Governor Wu, was recently at the imperial court. And while he was there, Governor Wu directly praised Bayou's father, Jia Zheng, to the emperor himself.
To the emperor. And specifically, he praised Jia Zheng's fair handling of scholars when he was an education official.
Right.
The prince explicitly calls this a good omen for Jia Zheng, and the machinery of this rumor mill moves incredibly fast.
Lightning fast.
Because as soon as the men return home, the steward, Lin Zixiao, rushes in to report that Governor Wu actually came to their estate to visit while they were out.
You couldn't even wait.
Exactly. Furthermore, rumors are rapidly swirling through the bureaucracy that Jia Zheng is the top candidate for a newly vacant director post a Langzong in the Ministry of Works.
The velocity of this political elevation is staggering, but it highlights exactly how aristocratic alliances function.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. If we strip away the antique robes and the, formal language, we see a universal truth about networking at the absolute highest levels.
Oh, for sure.
True political power isn't necessarily the direct ability to stamp a document and grant a job. It's the ability to make a casual observation that entirely shapes reality for everyone beneath you.
Yes.
When the prince calls it a good omen, his nod essentially makes the rumor true. It's an ironclad job reference.
It is. And Jia Zheng's reaction to this shifting reality is just a masterclass in aristocratic emotion regulation.
How does he react?
Well, when the servant delivers this earth-shattering career news, Jia Zheng remains an absolute stone wall. He simply says, we'll see.
We'll see. That's it.
That's it. He gives away zero leverage to his staff.
He refuses to let them see him sweat or celebrate.
Exactly. Because emotional regulation is power in this era. You don't show your hand to the help.
Right.
But privately. Once he is behind closed doors with grandmother Jia, he completely decodes the situation. He tells her that Governor Wu has backbone.
Which means what in this context?
In the specific lexicon of their class, backbone doesn't just mean bravery. It means Governor Wu is a factional ally. He is signaling his allegiance.
Ah, okay.
Jia Zheng's stoicism in public is an active performance of authority, while his private assessment reveals the intricate web of mutual favors and whispered endorsements that actually run the empire.
It's all about who controls the flow of information, which serves as the perfect mechanism for what happens next. Just as Jia Zheng receives this very real, tangible political omen about his career, the narrative pivots entirely to a supernatural omen.
A cult shift.
And the way the family leadership manipulates it is honestly ruthless.
We move from the capital P politics of the imperial court straight back into the domestic politics of the inner quarters.
Right. So Baoyu goes back inside. He shows the women his new replica, Jade, from the prince. And while everyone is admiring this, heavy symbol of royal patronage, Baoyu casually drops a bizarre detail.
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, he mentions that his original Jade, the mystical one he was actually born with, started glowing red in the pitch dark the other night. He says the whole bed net was glowing.
And you have to watch the immediate contrasting reactions of the two most powerful women in the family here.
It's so telling.
It really is. Grandmother Jia, the ultimate matriarch, applies pure, cold pragmatism. She immediately dismisses it. She says the bed curtains are red, and it was merely a trick of the light from a lantern.
She attempts to shut down the supernatural narrative entirely. Like, nope, nothing to see here.
Right. But then Wang Sheng, the executive suite manager who terrifies concubine Zhao, she steps in and overrides the logical explanation.
Of course she does.
Wang Sheng definitively declares that the glowing red jade is a sign of joy. It's an undeniable mystical omen that something wonderful is about to happen.
And the phrase sign of joy functions as like a linguistic skeleton key for them, right?
Absolutely.
Because by introducing that specific phrasing, Wang Shifeng smoothly transitions the elders into a highly coded discussion about an impending marriage proposal.
Right. The mechanics of this conversation are fascinating. They don't just come out and say, hey, let's plan a wedding.
No, that would be too direct.
They speak entirely in implications. They start discussing An Shu and how they're just waiting for Su Pan to return to finalize some vague arrangements.
Just arrangements.
Yeah. Anyone fluent in the politics of the household understands they are actually orchestrating a marriage between Bao Yu and An Shu's daughter, Xu Baochai.
And the tragic irony here is that Bao Yu is sitting right there. He's holding his shiny new replica jade, utterly oblivious to the true meaning of their words.
He has no idea.
He thinks they're just making small talk, while his only real concern is that his true love, Lin Daiyu, has been sick and is absent from the room.
He is completely bypassed in the negotiation of his own existence. He is distracted by the shiny object of royal favor, while his future is mapped out in front of him in a language he isn't even paying attention to.
I have to challenge the motives of the elders here, specifically Wang Shifeng.
Okay, let's hear it.
Should we interpret her reaction as genuine belief in this mystical glowing jade? Like, does she really think it's magic? Or is this pure Machiavellian opportunism?
Oh, that's a good point.
It feels like she is weaponizing Bao Yu's own story as a convenient PR spin to legitimize the arranged marriage agenda they already wanted to execute, specifically taking advantage of the fact that Daiyu is conveniently sick and out of the way.
This raises an important question about who actually controls the narrative in a family. Wang Shifeng does not need to believe the jade is biologically or mystically glowing. She really doesn't. She only needs the idea of a sign of joy to be accepted by the room.
Ah, I see.
Because if the room accepts the omen, they must accept the action the omen demands, which is the marriage. The adults are actively mining the teenager's supernatural experience for their own political capital.
It's a breathtakingly efficient use of an opportunity, but wow, it's incredibly cold.
It is the reality of their survival, though.
Yeah.
And the author's framing of this entire 24-hour sequence is nothing short of structural genius. Consider where we began.
We started with a spilled medicine pot and a terrified mother.
Exactly. We started with the petty, vicious physics of displaced anxiety in the inner quarters. And how does this end?
Oh, wait.
After the architectural intimidation of the royal audience, the whisper network career elevations, and the coded mystical marriage plotting, Baoyu finally retreats to his private room. And what does he find there? His maids, Sheyu and Kiwen, are viciously fighting over a few meager coins from a card game.
Wow. That is a brutally perfect narrative loop.
It bookends the chapter flawlessly. You have the high-stakes imperial and mystical maneuvers sandwiched directly between the mundane, endless, desperate bickering of the household staff.
It's all the same thing, just different scale.
Yes. It drives home the point that whether you are dealing with princes in ceremonial robes or maids fighting over copper coins, the fundamental struggle for leverage, safety, and control never ceases. The scale changes, but the structural violence of human nature remains exactly the same. Meanwhile,
Zheng. Now, she is Baoyu's chief maid.
right, which in this hierarchy means she's essentially his closest confidant. She's a highly powerful figure in his immediate household.
Right, she runs the show there. But Zheng is deeply concerned because Bayu has become completely fixated on these rumors circulating about his potential marriage.
And we should probably clarify the stakes here for the listener. In this world, a marriage isn't just about two young people having a crush on each other.
Oh, no, not at all. It's a massive corporate merger.
Exactly. It's a power shift. It directly dictates the livelihood, the physical safety, and the future retirement plans of every single servant in that young man's household.
So if Bayu marries someone who dislikes Zheng, Zheren's life is effectively ruined.
Her career is over. Her status is gone. That underlying economic and social reality is what drives her actions here. She desperately needs intelligence on these marriage rumors.
But she can't just ask Bayu directly, right? Because his behavior lately has been so erratic and volatile.
Right. So she decides to visit the residence of the girl at the center of Bayu's affection, Dayu.
And she heads over to Dayu's quarters, this Jiaxiang mansion, to basically feel out Dayu's maid, Zihuan.
Yeah, she wants to get the gossip from the inside.
The text gives us such a beautifully framed scene here, too. When Zheng arrives in the morning, she finds Zihuan peacefully picking flowers.
It's very idyllic.
It is. And Dayu, even though she's currently unwell and waiting for her morning medicine, she's already sitting up and reading a book. It's this picture of perfect, serene domesticity.
But the serenity of the environment contrasts so sharply with Zheng's internal anxiety. I mean, she is walking into a highly sensitive space.
That she has to be so careful.
If she asks directly about the marriage rumors, she risks exposing Bayu's vulnerabilities or offending Dayu.
Or sparking a whole household scandal that she'll end up taking the blame for. It really reminds me of corporate espionage masked as a friendly lunch, you know?
Oh, completely.
You don't ask your competitor if they're planning a merger. You casually compliment their new office layout and wait to see if they, mention expanding their team.
Right. You want the information, but you absolutely cannot be caught asking for it.
Exactly. So Zheng tests the waters. She offers this polite, self-deprecating joke, noting that Dayu is already studying. She says something like, "Oh, I wish my own master, Bayu, studied as diligently as you read."
She floats a trial balloon just to see how they react to Bayu's name. Zheng is incredibly perceptive, and she makes a rapid calculation in that exact moment.
What does she realize?
Well, she realizes that Dayu is a fragile ecosystem unto herself. She's highly sensitive and prone to overthinking every single interaction.
Right?
If Zheng probes too deeply, Dayu might spiral into an emotional crisis. And that would ultimately rebound and make things much, much worse for Bayu.
The diplomatic risk is simply too high. So Zheng actually aborts the mission.
She does. She cuts her losses.
Yeah, she decides to just leave without asking any of the real questions she came to ask. She realizes the intelligence just isn't worth the potential fallout.
Her first intelligence gathering mission fails completely. But, the irony of this rigidly controlled environment is that while you're carefully plotting your next move, chaos often just finds you anyway.
Well, it literally finds her, because on her way back to her own courtyard, Zheng stumbles right into a completely different piece of drama waiting at the gate.
Right. She catches a young man named Jia Yun sneaking around.
Yeah, he's hovering near the gate, and he's using another servant to secretly deliver a note specifically for Baoyu. And Zheng instantly distrusts this.
She reads Jia Yun as sly and untrustworthy, very overly secretive.
And we find out exactly why she's suspicious tonight when Baoyu actually reads the note. Which brings us to, honestly, one of the most psychologically revealing moments in the entire text.
It really highlights the incredibly fragile ego of the elite in this society.
Okay, I really need to push back on this scene and have you explain it to me, because on the surface, this grievance is completely bizarre.
It sounds absurd to modern ears, yeah.
Right. So Baoyu opens the note in his room, and it's addressed to Uncle. Now, Baoyu is furious. Why? Because previously, when the same young man, Jia Yun, gifted him some lovely white begonias, he addressed Baoyu as father.
Yes.
And now Baoyu feels deeply slighted by this supposed demotion from father to uncle. Wait, why is a teenage boy throwing a tantrum because someone is not calling him dad? I mean, is this just the pure arrogance of a spoiled heir, or is there a deeper political game being played here?
It's a fantastic question. To understand this, we have to look past the literal definitions of the words and look at the socio-political economy of this 18th century aristocracy.
Okay.
This has absolutely nothing to do with literal parenthood. In this highly stratified society, what we call fictive kinship, using family titles for people you aren't actually related to in that way, is a hard currency.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just a cute nickname.
Not at all. It is a tool for establishing patronage and loyalty.
Almost like a mafia boss being called the Godfather or a powerful politician being called a ward boss. The title is a contract.
The title is absolutely a contract. By calling Bao Yu father previously, Jia Yun, who is actually older but lower in the family hierarchy, was placing himself in a position of ultimate, devoted subservience.
Oh, wow.
It was a flattering display of total loyalty. He was essentially saying, I am your vassal.
Okay, so by changing the address to uncle, which I guess it's technically more accurate to their distant generational family tree.
Yes, it is more accurate.
But by doing that, Jia Yun is subtly pulling back. He's establishing a boundary.
Exactly. That completely changes the context.
So Bao Yu isn't mourning the loss of a son. He's realizing he's bleeding followers. He's losing a loyalist, and it's making him deeply insecure.
It triggers a profound sense of abandonment. It highlights just how much these characters rely on the performative devotion of others to feel secure in their own precarious status.
And Bao Yu is already simmering with anxiety about the marriage rumors, right?
Right. He feels like he has no control over his own future. So this tiny, slight, literally single-changed word on a piece of paper sends him completely over the edge.
Over the edge is an understatement. The emotional whiplash we see in this scene is intense. Let's look at the cascade here. He reads the note, he gets furious, he tears the note into tiny pieces.
And then he burns the pieces.
Right. Then he goes to dinner, sits there in a complete daze, refuses to eat, goes back to his room, gets into bed, and suddenly just starts weeping.
He simply lacks the emotional tools to process this accumulation of anxiety. The pressure has to vent somewhere.
And his other maid, Yu, is watching this meltdown, and she finally loses her patience. She gets incredibly frustrated by these mysterious letters causing his wild mood swings.
Understandably so.
Yeah, she actually starts crying herself, complaining about how impossible it is to deal with his volatile temper. And then, and this is the part that fascinates me, when she gets upset, Bao Yu suddenly bursts out laughing.
Yes, it's such a striking shift.
He cheerfully brushes off his clothes and declares it's time for bed, acting as if absolutely nothing happened. What is going on there?
What you're seeing is Bao Yu using emotional volatility as a shield. When Yu breaks down, the tension in the room shatters.
Oh, I
He deflects the depth of his own anxiety by suddenly acting carefree. It's a bizarre coping mechanism to protect his ego.
So he realizes he's exposed too much weakness.
Exactly. He attempts to hit the reset button by going to sleep, basically hoping the anxiety will just vanish by morning.
Well, he tries to sleep it off, but the universe has entirely different plans because the very next morning, all of this quiet, lingering internal tension violently collides with a massive, noisy, external political reality.
This brings us to the morning commute. Bao Yu is heading to the family school, carrying all of this leftover paranoia. And who does he run into?
Jia Yun, the author of the note.
Right.
And Jia Yun is rushing toward him, looking incredibly excited, and shouts, "Uncle, great joy!"
And remember, Bao Yu's state of mind here.
Right. He is consumed by his own internal anxieties regarding the marriage rumors. So when he hears the phrase great joy, which is traditionally associated with weddings, right?
Yes, very commonly used for weddings.
His paranoia just flares up. He assumes Jia Yun is taunting him about the marriage rumors, and he gets instantly defensive.
His internal drama is completely blinding him to what is actually happening, because suddenly the entire household erupts.
It's chaos. People are running in every direction, shouting about coming to claim their joy. We need to explain this concept because claiming their joy is such a fascinating economic mechanism.
It really is. Claiming joy is a traditional practice where servants and dependents ask for tips or monetary rewards when the master of the house achieves something significant.
It's like a bonus structure.
Pretty much. You have to remember, servants in this era relied heavily on a trickle-down system of favors and tips rather than just a flat wage.
And the news that drops is the ultimate trigger for this system. Jia Zheng, who is Bao Yu's father and the strict patriarch of the family, has just been promoted to the rank of bureau director.
Zhang. It is a monumental political victory.
This isn't just a fancy title, is it?
Oh no. It means more access to state resources, more visitors, more bribes at the door, and a massive influx of wealth for the entire estate.
So the scale of Bao Yu's petty internal drama is suddenly utterly dwarfed by this real-world shift in power.
Completely dwarfed.
He's like a junior VP at a corporation sweating bullets because he thinks he's being called into HR over a minor interpersonal conflict, only to open the door and find out his CEO father just executed a hostile takeover of their biggest rival.
And the entire company is popping champagne.
Exactly. That is the exact scale of the disconnect. But Jia Yun, who clearly lacks any ability to read the room or understand Bao Yu's fragile mental state, pushes his luck.
He really does. He teases Bao Yu, saying, hey, if your marriage goes through too, it'll be a double joy.
Which is the absolute worst thing he could possibly say to a teenager already on the brink. Bao Yu is so flustered, so caught between his private terror and this public celebration, that he literally spits at Jia Yun and storms off.
It's such a raw, visceral reaction from a character who is usually so poetic and refined.
Yeah, it really illustrates how deeply his private anxieties are clashing with the public expectations thrust upon him. So Bao Yu manages to get to the family school, but the teacher immediately gives him the day off to celebrate his father's promotion.
But the teacher adds a stern warning, telling Bao Yu to learn from his older, more responsible brother and not just use the day to play in the garden.
Basically, go celebrate, but think about your political future. It's a classic authority figure move.
Right.
So with school canceled, Bao Yu heads straight back into the inner quarters of the estate. And this is where the dynamic of the entire story shifts again. The external political victory is about to be celebrated, but it forces all of this internal, incredibly awkward family tension into one single room.
If you look closely at the architecture of power here, the inner quarters are the true heart of the family's political machine.
So when Bao Yu arrives, we're presented with a very specific, curated tableau. Everyone is gathered and smiling. The matriarch, Grandmother Jia, Lady Wang, Lady Zheng, and various sisters.
However, the text makes a point to note that Bao Chai, Bao Qin are conspicuously absent.
And in a house that runs entirely on appearances, absences are just as loud as presences. Why are they missing?
It's a calculated social move. Those missing women represent different factions or complications regarding the marriage rumors we talked about earlier.
Oh, okay.
With Jia Zheng's sudden promotion, the political calculus of who Bao Yu should marry might change overnight. Sometimes, the smartest political move in a shifting landscape is to simply stay out of the room until the dust settles.
Wow, that is brilliant. But you know, the main event in this room isn't who is missing. It's the incredibly stilted greeting between the two people who are actually there, Bao Yu and Dayu.
Right, they haven't seen each other in a few days because they've both been unwell.
You would think, given their deep emotional connection, they would be so relieved to see each other. Instead, they engage in this painfully stiff, formal exchange.
They ask about each other's recent illnesses, but the tone is completely unnatural. The pressure of the room, combined with those unaddressed rumors, makes the interaction so rigid that Dayu actually turns her head away mid-conversation to talk to someone else.
She simply cannot bear the awkwardness. And we have all experienced some version of this, right?
Oh, definitely.
It's that agonizing moment when your entire extended family is watching you interact with someone you have complicated feelings for, and your brain just completely short circuits. You forget how to function as a normal human being.
And Wang Shifeng, who is the brilliantly sharp-tongued manager of the household, immediately spots the awkwardness and weaponizes it.
Yes. Shifeng's observation is piercing. She laughs and announces to the room that Bao Yu and Dayu are acting more like polite guests than people who live together every single day.
She specifically uses the phrase, respecting each other like guests.
Which makes Dayu blush fiercely. Why does that specific phrase land like a grenade in the middle of the room?
Because respecting each other like guests is a traditional idiom used almost exclusively to describe the ideal formal dynamic between a husband and a wife.
Oh. So Shifeng is totally calling them out in front of everyone.
She is bringing the unspoken subtext right to the surface. Shifeng is using a socially acceptable compliment about their polite behavior to actually poke fun at the romantic tension between them.
That's amazing.
It completely flusters both of them because it forces their private anxiety into the public spotlight.
And Bao Yu panics. To change the subject, he randomly blurts out complaints about Jia Yun, calling him a reckless fool. The whole room just stares at him completely confused.
Right. They're talking about health and family unity, and he's suddenly ranting about the guy who delivered a note the night before.
He is entirely out of sync with the room's celebratory frequency. His internal world is bleeding into the external celebration, and it threatens to ruin the mood. But then a grand convergence happens that saves the situation.
Yes. Bayou scrambles and pivots to mentioning a new theatrical troupe he heard about outside.
And Zheng jumps in, confirming that her uncle's family is indeed sending a new theatrical troupe to celebrate Jia Zheng's massive political promotion.
And then Lady Wang, Bayou's mother, chimes in to point out a crucial detail. The day after tomorrow isn't just a good day for a play, it's also Dayu's birthday.
This is where we see true, masterful leadership in this environment. Grandmother Jia, who is the ultimate authority in the inner quarters, takes all these disparate, chaotic threads, the massive promotion, the theatrical troupe, Dayu's birthday, and that underlying awkward romantic tension, and she just weaves them together flawlessly.
She jokingly calls Zhifeng her advisor and then decrees the ultimate plan.
She dictates that the uncle's family can celebrate the patriarch's promotion by sending the troupe, and her own family will use that exact same occasion to celebrate Dayu's birthday.
It's a 2-for-1 party.
And Baoyu is so relieved by this resolution that he literally dances.
It is a masterstroke of what we might call authoritarian joy.
Authoritarian joy, I like that.
Grandmother Jia brilliantly manages the morale of the entire estate by blending a serious patriarchal political milestone with a young orphaned girl's birthday. She completely neutralizes the awkwardness.
It's genius.
She honors the rigid hierarchical achievements of her son, elevates Dayu's status to show family benevolence, and wraps it all in an impenetrable blanket of total familial harmony. Because we're dealing with the Jia family at the absolute peak of their social performance, the opulence is just staggering.
Oh, it's off the charts. There are over 10 tables of guests. You've got officials wandering around in full formal uniform.
And right at the center of it all is Lin Dayu. I mean, the text explicitly compares her beauty that day to change descending to earth.
It is this meticulously curated environment where everyone is playing a highly specific role. They're draped in fine silks, participating in this grand, polite fiction of a perfect society.
But even in this perfectly controlled, heavily perfumed atmosphere, there's a tiny, almost imperceptible crack showing.
Yeah, there is a glaring absence at this party.
Right. Su Baochai is completely missing.
Yeah.
And when Dayu asks about her, Ansu gives this very polite, kind of flimsy excuse that Baochai had to stay behind to, quote, watch the house because of their new sister-in-law, Xie Jingwei.
Which is pretty thin. Dayu even teases her a bit, wondering why the incredibly sophisticated Baochai is suddenly reduced to house-sitting.
It gets brushed off with a laugh, but it plants a really crucial seed for the reader.
Yeah.
It signals that the situation over at the Zhu household is, well, perhaps not as stable as their public faces suggest.
And that underlying instability is brilliantly foreshadowed by the entertainment they choose for this party.
Oh my gosh, yes. Here's where it gets really interesting, because let's look at the actual media they are consuming while sipping wine in their finery.
The Jia family brings in a theatrical troupe, and the choices are deeply, darkly ironic, given what is about to happen.
So the third play of the day is The Ascension to the Heavens. It's a tragedy about a young woman who avoids a mortal marriage, dies, and ascends to the Moon Palace.
And the fourth play is literally called Eating Chaff.
Right. And then the fifth play features the monk Bodhidharma creating a massive sea mirage-like, a literal illusion. It's basically like hiring a band for a joyous celebration, but they only play dark, tragic songs.
What's fascinating here is the absolute disconnect between the elite audience and the art they are consuming.
They are completely detached.
Totally. You have the wealthiest, most privileged family in the capital casually watching entertainment about death, starvation, and fleeting illusions.
Yeah, they are clapping for tragedies that they view as mere fairy tales.
Exactly. The idea of eating chaff is just a dramatic concept to them. It's completely divorced from reality. Meanwhile, they are entirely oblivious to the real-world tragedy that is about to strike their own inner circle.
It reminds me of how ultra-wealthy elites today might host a lavish yacht party and screen a biting eat-the-rich satire like The White Lotus or Parasite.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
They think they're just consuming clever entertainment, you know. They're so insulated by their wealth that they view the depiction of their own societal rot as purely fictional. They don't recognize themselves in the tragedy.
And because that elite bubble is so perfectly curated and so detached from actual suffering, the bursting of that bubble isn't a slow leak, it is incredibly violent.
Yeah, the illusion isn't broken by a grand monologue or a polite whisper. It's shattered by a physical intrusion that violates every rule of their social etiquette.
Right in the middle of this polite, mirage-filled theatrical performance, a servant from the Zhu family physically bursts into the party.
He is sweating, he is visibly panicked, and he runs straight up to Zhu Ke and Aunt Shu, demanding they return immediately.
But he refuses to say what the crisis is out loud in front of the Jia family.
He just issues this frantic demand to go home.
Yeah.
So what does this reveal about the fragility of this high society world? Because you have Lady Jia, the matriarch, watching this happen with polite curiosity, contrasting with Aunt Shu's sheer terror.
Well, look at the physiological reaction the text describes here. Aunt Shu doesn't just look concerned, she turns the color of earth.
Wow.
She is terrified to her very core. She grabs Baokin and essentially flees the party without offering any proper explanation to her hosts.
Which is unthinkable for someone of her wealth and status. She completely loses her ability to perform her social role.
It reveals the underlying sociology of face. In this specific cultural context, maintaining your public face, your composure, your adherence to ritual is the absolute highest priority.
Right.
The fact that Aunt Sue couldn't even maintain the bare minimum of composure to invent a polite, fake excuse to exit signals to everyone in that room that the protective wall of their wealth has been fundamentally breached. When the ultra-rich cannot even pretend everything is okay, the disaster is monumental.
We follow Aunt Sue directly out of that perfumed theatrical confusion straight into the chaotic, gritty reality of the Zhu home. The transition is just jarring. Yeah, there are bailiffs and pawn shop workers already waiting at her door. The pristine world of the Jia family feels like a million miles away.
And the crisis is finally named, and the stakes are existential. Aunt Shu's son, Shu Pan, has killed someone.
The servants make the legal reality very clear. This is a life-for-a-life situation.
In their legal system, a murder charge demands capital punishment. The problem has instantly escalated from polite society gossip to the impending execution of the family heir.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Aunt Shu's immediate visceral instinct as a mother is to try and throw massive amounts of money directly at the grieving family.
Right. She frantically says she wants to find the victim's family, pay for the sending off, cover the burial, and give them a lifelong pension.
Just so the plaintiffs will drop the case. To you and me, doesn't Aunt Shu's plan to just financially compensate the victim's family seem like the quickest, most straightforward fix for a rich family in a bind? Why wouldn't that work?
It seems entirely logical to a desperate person operating on maternal panic. But this is where Bao Chai's chilling pragmatism comes in.
Ah, Bao Chai.
Bao Chai is listening from behind a curtain, and she strictly, coldly vetoes her mother's plan. Bao Chai aligns completely with the dark, pragmatic strategy of their servants.
Wait, really? Why?
If we look at the mechanics of this specific environment, paying off the victims directly is a catastrophic miscalculation. It puts blood in the water.
Wait, so by trying to pay them off, Aunt Sue isn't making a transaction. She's accidentally creating a permanent hostage situation.
Precisely. If you show the victim's family you are willing to pay them to go away, they will never actually go away. You have just signaled that your wealth is accessible to them.
Oh, wow.
They will keep coming back for more indefinitely, holding the threat of the murder charge over your head until you are bled dry. It incites endless extortion.
So the servant outlines the cleaner route, which is just a terrifying look at how their corrupt legal system actually functions.
You don't pay the victims, you bypass them entirely and go straight to the architects of the law.
You use your silver to hire a knife and pen lawyer, a specialist who knows exactly how to manipulate the official bureaucratic paperwork.
You bribe the local officials to rewrite the initial charges to remove the death penalty.
Then, and only then, you use the Jia family's massive political leverage to lobby the higher-ups to squash whatever minor charges are left over.
It is a sequential lock-picking of the justice system. It perfectly encapsulates how systemic corruption functions not as a breakdown of the law, but as an alternative set of rules.
Right.
The law isn't a rigid moral standard. It's a bureaucratic obstacle course. You can navigate it, but only if you know exactly who to pay, how much to pay them, and in what specific order.
It is incredibly cold. I mean, they're engineering a complete legal fiction while the victim's body is barely cold. And meanwhile, there are bailiffs literally standing outside the house.
Yeah, the servant pragmatically advises Aunt Sue to just hand those bailiffs a few taels of silver immediately to buy their silence.
All while the family sets this massive structural fraud in motion.
But executing a high-level structural legal fraud requires absolute internal discipline. And the Zhu family is currently hemorrhaging discipline.
The house is falling apart from the inside. Which brings us to Xia Jingwei, the sister-in-law who served as the initial excuse for Bao Chai missing the party.
Jinghui throws an explosive, violent tantrum. She physically grabs the maid Shangling and starts screaming.
Her complaint is absolutely fascinating because it exposes the family's past. She screams that the family used to boast about how they could get away with murder before they came to the capital.
They bragged about their untouchable power.
But now that a murder has actually happened, she hypocritically mocks them for being terrified and fumbling around in the dark.
And the kicker is her motivation. She isn't crying because a man is dead or out of fear that her husband might be executed.
She explicitly cries because if he dies, she will be left alone to suffer the social consequences.
It is a deeply selfish, narcissistic reaction, but analytically, it exposes a crucial structural vulnerability in the Shu family's status.
How so?
Jinghui reveals that the Shu family's power is inherently regional. Back in their home province, they were a big fish in a small pond. They likely were untouchable and could make local problems disappear with a wave of their hand.
But here in the capital, surrounded by the truly powerful elites like the Jia family, their provincial wealth isn't a perfect shield anymore.
Exactly. They are out of their depth. Jinghui's hysterics threaten to expose this vulnerability to the entire city at the exact moment they need total airtight secrecy.
Which makes Bao Chai's response all the more masterful. Consider the immense pressure on her in this exact moment. Her mother is literally fainting and talking about dying alongside her son.
Her sister-in-law is screaming at the top of her lungs about past unpunished murders.
And right in the middle of this internal collapse, Bao Chai has to handle a massive external threat. Lady Wang sends her headmaid over from the Jia family to snoop.
Lady Jia had promised to send someone to listen in, and the surveillance has arrived at the absolute worst possible time. This is a critical make-or-break juncture.
How do you handle the active surveillance of your much more powerful political allies when your own house is actively tearing itself apart over a capital scandal?
Bao Chai delivers a masterclass in PR spin. She steps out to meet the maid and projects total, absolute, unshakable calm.
She gives a perfectly non-committal answer. She says essentially, "Oh, we don't really know the details yet. We just heard my brother was taken by the county for an altercation. We're waiting for the facts."
It's entirely neutral. It downgrades a murder to an altercation.
But then she adds this brilliant, subtle hook. She thanks the maid for coming and smoothly mentions that the Zhu family will likely be relying on the Jia family's men very soon.
She is playing three-dimensional chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
Wow.
Bao Chai is simultaneously managing her mother's fainting spells, neutralizing her sister-in-law's highly incriminating outbursts, and expertly deflecting the Jia family's surveillance.
More importantly, she is laying the necessary groundwork for the political favor they will need to execute the bribery scheme later.
She gives the Jia maid absolutely nothing scandalous to gossip about, but firmly secures the political lifeline they will need to pull off the cover-up. She is the solitary anchor of competence in a storm of panic.
So we have this ruthless, cold-blooded strategy perfectly mapped out by Bao Chai and the servants. But a plan is just a plan until it actually hits the courtroom. How does this actually play out in the legal system?
We find out 2 days later, a letter arrives from Suke, the relative who went to handle the mess with the knife and pen lawyer.
We get the receipt. The fix is officially in.
That letter is a remarkable piece of correspondence. It acts as a literal step-by-step receipt for the mechanics of bureaucratic corruption.
The letter details that the charge has miraculously been downgraded. The official paperwork no longer says intentional murder, which carries the mandatory death penalty.
It has been neatly rewritten as manslaughter or accidental injury.
Now, the letter does note one significant hiccup. Su Pan, the killer, apparently panicked and gave a terrible, highly incriminating initial confession to the magistrate.
But the plan to fix that confession is shockingly simple. They just need money.
Specifically, 500 taels of silver drawn directly from their pawn shop.
They need that 500 taels to lubricate the next level of the bureaucracy. They're going to bribe the officials to grant a second hearing.
And the plan is to have Su Pan simply flip his confession on the stand.
Right. Now that the paperwork has been smoothed over by the lawyer, Su Pan just has to change his story to match the new downgraded charge. If he regurgitates the newly invented narrative, he lives.
The source material leaves us with this incredible, deeply unsettling cliffhanger right at the end of this sequence.
It really does.
The servant who delivers this letter to the women mentions, almost as an aside, that he was actually there the night of the murder. And he says he heard a deeply confusing, baffling conversation between the brothers that night.
Yeah.
So just as the family is about to successfully buy their way out of a murder charge,
Yeah.
we, the audience, are left completely in the dark, questioning what actually happened.